Put that coffee down.
I'm not here to waste your time, okay? I certainly hope you're not here to waste mine. So I'm gonna keep this short.
Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
Coffee's for closers only.
Hey there, friend. Welcome back to the Behind Your Back podcast with me, Bradley Hartman. This podcast, we talk about leadership, personal productivity, time management, and the craft of selling in the construction industry. This episode is brought to you by Boise Cascade Engineered Wood Products. They help you move faster and build stronger. They make it easier to get more done. And our friends at Materials Exchange. They're the LBM industry's answer to E-Trade. Materials Exchange is your digital marketplace for lumber and panels. Well, I am thrilled to bring to you today my conversation with Miss Ryann Hartley. You will hear the story about how I met Ryann when she was identified very early on in her career, shortly after graduating from the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, when talented leadership saw her and said, this person is going somewhere. And Ryann certainly did. She worked for Sherwin-Williams and then CertaPro. And at the age of 29, she launched her own company, Hartley Flooring, at a very, very interesting time in history in the construction industry and at large. That was November of 2019. So we talk about her journey growing the business very early on. And I find Ryann extremely impressive as an individual and as a business owner, but also I think she's inspirational and motivational. When I see her and the things that she's doing, I'm also thinking, I think I can do more myself. I think we can grow faster and do larger things. And I think she just has that energy and that excitement and that optimism about her that I think you are really going to resonate with. And I think her story really demonstrates when you have really intentional goals and you know that you want to grow into something in the future, the magic that can happen when you put your mind to something and deliberately go after it. And in general, I think people probably overestimate what they might be able to do in 12 or 18 months and underestimate what they can do in 5 and certainly 10 years. And I think Ryann Hartley is certainly an example of that. We're going to talk about selling yourself when you are not an expert. Her expertise was in paint. She started a flooring business. And while there's a lot of similarities, at the end of the day, she says, I'm not afraid to say that I'm not an expert yet. However, she knows how to get things done. She knows the people. She builds strong relationships. And you have confidence in her that no matter what, hell or high water, she's going to make this happen. And we also talk about attracting talent. And she talks about 2 things very specifically that I have not stopped thinking about since we spoke. That is, number 1, her philosophy on meetings. You're going to enjoy listening to that. And in her company at Hartley Flooring, they have unlimited vacation. And while she acknowledges that at a certain scale, maybe that will present a downside in the near term, this is a really unique way to attract top-level talent to help grow your business. So I'm excited to share my conversation with Ryann Hartley of Hartley Flooring with you. As always, thank you for listening. So Miss Ryann Hartley, welcome to the show.
Bradley, it is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm thrilled you're here. And I told you before, I'm not sure if this is a sign that your priorities are out of whack or I should be definitely honored because you are calling in from Las Vegas for your 30th birthday, which sounds exciting. But yeah, I think adds a little more pressure on me because there's got to be a lot more enjoyable things to do than talk to me today.
You know what? I'll enjoy this time, and there's plenty of Vegas doesn't stop. So I'll be out as late as I need to tonight to get everything in I need to get in.
Yes, that's 100% accurate. You'll be able to catch up. Well, my antenna always goes up when I'm talking to people that I find very impressive and I trust a lot and I learn a lot from. When they say, here is this individual and this person's going to be a superstar, because that happened through us with one Catherine Davis at Sherwin-Williams, who's been on the show. And I think you had worked there less than a year and we had connected and she just said, let me just tell you, Ryann Hartley is going to be a superstar. She's amazing. We have to make sure she grows up in here and she doesn't leave.
Aww.
That didn't, I know, I don't want to make you feel bad, but I think you knew that, right? And then, so you went from Sherwin, then you went to CertaPro, right? Now you're launching your own business there. And again, I think she saw something in you very early on. My question to you is, how intentional did you recognize the talents and ambition that you had and said, hey, one day I'm going to own my own business and it's going to be sooner rather than later?
Yeah, such a great question. When I think back to like, if anybody would have asked me, do you want to own your own business someday? I think the answer from the time I was probably like 7 years old would always have been yes. So yeah, my parents were small business owners. Have you read the book? I think it's called Who Moved My Cheese. Do you remember that old business fable? So my mom we were talking about this the other day, but she was reading that book by the pool when I was like, I don't know, probably 8 or 9. And she just remembers me being so interested, like, hey mom, read that loud to me. I want to hear, like, I was intrigued then. So there's always just been a part of me that's been, attracted to the competitive nature of business and the sort of the freedom it gives you to express yourself and, in whatever way that might be. And so I've always been interested in it. And Catherine, I love her. I hope she's doing well. I'll have to listen back to that podcast that she was on. I think whenever I joined Sherwin-Williams and I got a taste of what that big corporate life looked like, it was interesting at first. Like I remember meeting with her and feeling like this could be it. I could climb the ladder here forever, never reach the top, have a long, really healthy career. And then, the CertaPro opportunity came up and I ultimately decided to take that chance. And that was really probably the first real look in my adult life of like, yeah, I want to own my own business someday, after sort of getting a taste of what small business looked like from inside of it.
So it's interesting to me where you went from obviously Sherwin-Williams, so manufacturing, distribution, selling of paint, then into CertaPro, the franchise model, both commercial and residential. You now started your own with Hartley Flooring. By the way, I'm going to put your logo on Instagram. I got to share it with everyone. I think it's just so smart. You get it instantly. And I just fell in love with it. I think I've told you that like 4 times. Every time I look at it, I'm like, it's just so smart. And we'll touch on maybe marketing and branding here in a minute. But what sort of skills, or maybe it wasn't even skills, what sort of, if there was any sort of mental obstacles, did you have to overcome to think through to say, okay, I have competency in one thing, which is paint. However, there's absolutely no reason that launching in November of 19, unique period in time to start a business in construction. What gave you that confidence to say, we're going to go in and we're going to start with flooring?
Great question. The thing about flooring that was so attractive is one, the average sales is larger than paint where I came from.
Okay.
So that was something right off the bat that was attractive. And then the thing that just seemed to be a real natural fit was that all of these customers and relationships I had developed in my 5 years at CertaPro were going to perfectly translate into the flooring business. Yeah. And so it was, I remember thinking, gosh, what an exciting week it will be when I start this business and I can go to those people that I already have built relationships with and say, I would be honored if you'll now call me for flooring. Mm-hmm. So it really, it was, I think in the beginning, there is a little hesitancy about a brand new business. And, you were just in painting last week and now you're in flooring this week. So how can we trust that you're going to be the expert in flooring? And so I think there was sort of a learning curve there and time that it took for customers to get comfortable and to start trusting us with that, part of their business. But it went very well and it's been great. It's not rocket science. It's developing great relationships with people and earning their trust. And you don't even have to be perfect at what you do to do that. You just have to be willing to step in and make things right when you make mistakes. And if they know that about you, they're going to give you a shot for sure. So the feeling I have when I look back is just gratefulness for people being willing to take a chance on us. And those relationships are like, they mean a lot. And those people are friends, they're my friends now. And so it's been a really special thing to get to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, you touched on something that I'd love to ask you about is that I think an elite selling skill, but I think it's also a leadership skill. It's a person's ability to identify that they might not be considered or reasonably can't be considered an expert in a certain area. Mm-hmm. And they become very committed and focused to get up to speed as fast as possible so you can earn that trust and get that confidence. Were there specific things you did to, as you thought about, hey, I am going to be going to these people, and at the end of the day, a lot of what they're buying is the entrepreneur and the reputation and the trust in that. Were there things specifically you did to really speed up and kind of think of the craft of flooring and how you get from relative novice to closer to being an expert in a short amount of time?
I'll start by saying I've got a long ways to go to be a flooring expert. And there's no, I'm not embarrassed at all to say that. what I think we do, and I say we because it's something that we try to instill in everybody that works at Hartley Flooring, is just that if you just ask a lot of questions, you'll be shocked at how fast you'll learn the trade. And we're surrounded by people, a lot of our installers have 30 years experience in flooring. And so if you don't think there's a wealth of information there to tap into, you're crazy. When I don't understand something, I ask. And I think the thing that our customers buy into is that if I don't know the answer, I'll find it from somebody who is an expert in flooring. And through the time of doing this, I'm becoming one myself, so it's not some there's no program I can take to become a flooring expert. It's just time. It takes time. And in the meantime, utilizing your resources right to provide that expert level service without being one.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know, as you think of selling, and I think whenever you're an entrepreneur and you're starting out, if you're thinking about outsourcing that sales part of the process, you're starting to ask for trouble there. But you went from Sherwin, obviously huge brand name recognition. Then you go to CertaPro, one of the largest franchises, very well-known name. And now on your own, how did you have to shift your selling mindset, if at all? Or how did you think about the changes that would be required to sell successfully when you don't have that big brand name behind you?
I think there's power in the person on the front lines doing the selling and developing relationships and being kind of that business development arm. When that person is the owner, there's nobody more passionate about what we do than me. There's just not. It's why I get out of bed every morning. So I think there's some power in that. But yeah, people aren't buying a brand. They're not buying the certainty of a paint company that's been in business for 150 years with 5,000 sales reps across the country. They're not buying that from us. It's just that when we get the opportunity to introduce somebody to our business, we do it. When we get the opportunity to thank somebody for a referral, we sit down and write a thank you note and thank them for it. It's just a really personal, intentional, but very natural sales process that doesn't require steps and checklists. And do you understand what I'm saying? It's just a much more personal approach.
Yeah, Ryan, absolutely. I heard someone say the other day is that lots of times on companies large and small, we get caught up into thinking, well, it's B2B, and in B2B, here's your sales process. Over it's B2C, you got to think differently because the company and the customer and how we do business. And so at the end of the day, all business is H to H. It's human to human. And if we can be authentic and you can prove you care and you respond, you've solved a lot of the issues that might arise. And you don't need a 5-step process or an 8-step process for that. And I could go on a whole tangent about thank you cards and just taking a moment to go. The fact that we have to call a thank you card old school, that alone really bugs me. So I don't want to say that, but that idea of just expressing gratitude to someone and being real about that, I think just says a lot about the owner, especially when everyone's busy, but when your name is, on the building, you're busier than most. You're kind of on 24/7. If you can find time to do that, you really say a lot to your customers, but you also set a model for your team. And that's, I think, my deliberate segue into a question about your team, because when I think about flooring and I think about growing a business starting in November of 19, my question is, how did you go about building your own team internally, but also how did you go about developing relationships with the actual installers as well?
Well, I think it's a natural thing that we people are attracted to us that fit our dynamic and that we would genuinely enjoy spending time with, and the same in reverse. So I think that just sort of naturally happens. But yeah, we don't take ourselves too serious. We have a lot of fun. We got to go on our first trip as a team. We went to Dallas for a conference, and then we got to go down on the Cowboy Stadium and enjoy dinner and a band. And it's we just love being together. And I hope they would all say the same thing. I certainly love it. But the other thing that I think makes us a little bit different is that we do value our personal time. I am so passionate about what we do, but I also like to have time outside of work too. And so that's something that's valued at Hartley Flooring for sure. We're progressive, and this makes a lot of people nervous, especially the more traditional people that are a few generations above us, but we don't have a vacation policy. If you can keep up with your work, you take vacation when you want to take it. And if you have a role in our business where you can do a lot of stuff remote and you can stay caught up, enjoy it, So it's cool to get to see people experience life outside of work in really beautiful ways while they're having a successful career at the same time.
There's got to be people that are listening that are like, oh my God, That's insane. This is
I'm uncomfortable. Can't do it. Yeah,
right.
for sure.
Sure.
Well, there's a couple of things I'd say. One, as small as our organization is, I think it's easier. It's not like we're running an organization with 50 people in the field that I have to manage, and somebody can slip through the cracks and not do any work at all.
Yeah.
So that's important to say. I think the other thing I'd say is, this may change over time as more and more organizations adopt policies similar to this, but right now there aren't many places you can work where that is the vacation policy.
Yeah.
So if you don't think our people aren't aware of that and don't want to abuse that, then they do. They're very aware that, like, hey, this is something that I want to be able to continue to experience, and so I'm not going to mess it up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got people in place where you aren't able to really measure their outcome well, I think that may be more of the problem and something that you should spend a little more time thinking through. But we've got some really good, clean, simple systems in place where it's really easy to see if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Now let's take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Do you ever find yourself annoyed when you have to make a phone call these days? It's Friday evening and you're deciding on dinner. It's your cheat day from that new carnivore diet you're on, exclusively eating beef, bacon, bonobo, bone marrow, Himalayan sea salt, and water. Telling yourself this diet here, this is a good long-term strategy for living. But tonight, you decide you want pizza. You turn to your wife and she says, yeah, you gotta call them. The number's on the magnet on the fridge. What? I gotta call them? And speak to a human? Why? There's no online ordering? Why not? How'd these clowns survive COVID with no online ordering? If it requires a phone call today, it better be unique and precious and complex and easy to screw up. Not like pizza, right? No, and not like lumber either. If you're still making phone calls, being put on hold, listening to Lindo Ronstadt elevator music, wasting time to learn about lumber pricing, you need to experience Materials Exchange. Materials Exchange is the LBM industry's answer to E-Trade. It's simple to view transparent pricing in real time, it's secure, it's easy to order, and it's low cost. So quit relying on phone calls to tell you lumber pricing. See for yourself by registering today at materialsexchange.com. That's the word materials, the letter X, and the word change. When you do register, and again, it's free, use the promo code BRADLEY, BRADLEY, and get your first trade free. There's zero risk, and you get real-time pricing transparency. Materials Exchange is the LBM industry's answer to E-Trade. Materials Exchange is your digital marketplace for lumber and panels. Well, I think that's really well said, and I think instinctively a lot of people will always think about the worst case scenario. And they'll say, oh my, well, I hope Ryan calls me in a few years when this thing, blows up. Yeah, when it blows up and realize it's a bad decision. I would also say is, if we always believe that talent is so critical, and we know right now it's really hard to get talented people to come, what if we took this thing and we didn't look at the negative and say, hey, we're going to be slow to hire and think about how we can use this as a real differentiator. And says, and I think to your point is, and we talk about this all the time with our clients, large and small, is are we being really specific about the goals we have, how we measure them, and what the expected outcomes are? And that's exactly what you said. Because if you have clarity around that, it's not some ambiguous thing. It's easy, right?
Yeah.
We know what the scoreboard says. We know your contribution to it. So it's not some big crazy thing. Is there anything else besides that unlimited vacation policy in theory that you guys have in kind of your lineup of things you can give to your employees?
Well, this is maybe a little bit of a stretch, but I do think it's kind of on track there. I think a lot of people would be attracted to an environment like this, but we do try to do such a good job aligning roles and responsibilities that I can count on one hand the amount of team meetings we've had this year. We don't have meetings. We just don't do it. We just go do your job. I'm going to do mine. Let's take back that time where we all sit in a circle and try to solve the world's problems. And instead, let's just do what we're supposed to do. I think at the end of the day, what we're finding is we move so efficiently through the day and through our jobs that we can have unlimited vacation. We can take out early on a Friday. We all those things can happen because it's here's what you're going to do. Here's your job, get it done. And let's live life outside of that. So I don't think that's something that you can put on a benefit list like unlimited vacation. And I don't know that there really is anything else with us that you could, but I do think that also just sort of shapes our environment and kind of how we think about what we do.
I would absolutely say that is a differentiator. If someone comes in and say, how are you guys different? Why would I want to work here? And be like, well, we're going to run through and explain our meeting policy. Number one, they would probably instantly think of the worst case scenario and be like, oh my God, they probably have, 2 meetings every day for an hour in the morning and the afternoon. And you would then say, here's our mindset. If we do a really good job of explaining about, where the organization is going, the goals that we have, your role, your job, your contribution, all this is really clear. And we're kind of planning out our schedule accordingly. A whole lot of meetings aren't necessary. And you kind of referred to something that kind of like if it's 80% good, just go. Well, like that's good enough, right? And I feel like sometimes, and I think we're at fault at this too, is where we'll have a meeting and we're trying to do is really get from like 92% to 96. And it takes as much energy to get that last, few percent than it does to get from 50 to 80. And it's kind of like, hey, is this good enough? And if you have good people who care, good enough is going to get you probably there. And then you'll have, maybe you have an extra punch list item or two, but you're probably going to be just fine.
Yep. I like it. And I think too that it lends a little easier to our, where we are right now in sort of the startup phase of like, hey, we've got to get the most out of each person that's on our team, and so eliminating team meetings. And now, hey, there's still meetings. Like I still may need to have a one-off meeting with our estimator to talk about this project, or a one-off meeting with our interior designer to go over this, or whatever that may look like. But it's like, we don't have this scheduled formal time where every week we all have to gather around this table and have a team meeting, or twice a week or once a day. We just don't do that.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to just think about, or it's probably more of a thought experiment than anything, but launching a company, you launch in November of 19, you have a few months of whatever the hell the old normal used to be. And then we're in this environment, a combination of being in the construction industry, which is generally more autonomous. You guys are running back and forth, doing your own thing. But then also having COVID, I think this idea that we have to have a Monday at 1:00 meeting every single week for our top 20 people. And that's how an organization, whether it's $1 billion or 10 million, has to run, that was forced to get questioned immediately. And a lot of times they're like, you know what? We don't need that. If I got to talk to Ryan, we're going to catch up on Zoom. We'll go face to face. It'll be 15 minutes and we're done. So I think a lot of those old, I'd say staples of more bureaucratic, more slower moving, but really profitable companies, I think a lot of those ideas and beliefs have really been challenged. And, I think if you kind of have this mindset about, hey, the last thing we want to do is have a ton of meetings because it's a waste of time and we have talented people and we're small and agile, just go do it. I think you probably launch in a perfect time to really support that.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. I do think, we talk a lot about the negative implications of the pandemic, but I do think it's when we get to the backside of this, which I hope we're close. I think what you'll see is, like you said, just a real shift of thinking and hey, like we were forced to do things so different from, one day we had to do it this way and the next day we were all forced to figure out how to make this work. And so there's a lot about business that can be challenged. And the last thing I'll say about team meetings is I do think that a lot of organizations have that time and hold that space for people to come and be together and to, support camaraderie. And, but if a team meeting is what it takes to do that, I think I'd argue that you need to dig a little deeper in your culture, so that's another thing that we say is like, hey, we don't need a team meeting to really deepen relationships with each other.
Yeah, it's very wise. You're right. Because we would hear this, and I'm flashing back to my corporate days. We used to have the meetings and people are like, do we really need these? And people are like, we always kind of joke around. We catch up on the week about what happened the weekends. Like that's part of our interpersonal time. And I think what you're saying is that is important. Is the meeting surrounding that to separating the first 15% of that meeting, is that a good use of your time? Probably not. Yeah. Just make dedicated time. And that's probably leads you to the fridge full of beer and,
and the happy hour.
And a happy hour, right? Yeah. I think that's smart. I want to ask you, how have you been able to develop kind of a support structure? Obviously, you mentioned your family. Being entrepreneurs is probably a huge asset. But are there any other things or places or people or mentors that you've been able to lean on both personally and professionally?
It's interesting to think about CertaPro because they, the franchise model, we've talked about this before, but the franchise model at CertaPro gives you this, unique system of people that are doing exactly what you do every day. There's probably a list of 10 people at any time that are in exactly the same situation, have been with the business as long as I have, or, experiencing the same things I'm experiencing. And I have access to that, that network of people. Interestingly enough, I think CertaPro created a lot of entrepreneurs a lot of people like me got that got that intimate look at small business and said, "Ooh, I like this, and I want to do this myself." And so there's a great list of people that have launched their own businesses, most of which were painting, that I've had I've been so blessed to be able to call and say, "Hey, what do you, how bad do you suck today? Because I'm sucking today," and it's just good to be able to have that relationship. And then also, this may sound funny, but we rely on our customers a lot for this. I mean, Tim Olkey, he's a great client of ours. He has Olkey Construction as a general contractor in Northwest Arkansas, and he left a large firm to start his own, and he's a client of ours. But I'll call Tim and say, "Hey, here's what we're looking at, bounce ideas off of him." I wouldn't necessarily say it's a formal like mentor-mentee relationship, but very much I gain his knowledge and experience on a lot of things. And so there's a list of people like that I don't have any problem at all picking up the phone and saying, "Thank you so much for helping me, and here's what I'm dealing with today. What do you think?" So that can absolutely not be underestimated, the people around you. And the other thing that I've just been so humbled by is that people want to help. They want to. They cannot wait to help. And so, I hope that I get to give back in those ways someday.
No, Ryan, I think that's really, really smart where you kind of talk about the role that customers can play there. To point out the obvious, you need to make sure you're not calling them on anything specific about your expertise in your domain. But
Sure.
if you can cover that, which is obvious, and then you kind of basically ask them, "Hey, on things unrelated to the way that I'm delivering value to you, what are your thoughts on this? How can I learn from you? I've been impressed with the way you've done this."
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think that's the really flattering thing when you say, "Hey, I've been impressed the way you handle this. I'm struggling. Any advice? Can I just listen?" And especially for people like you, when I firmly believe if I give Ryan advice, she's going to go out, she's going to act upon that. And more than likely, she's going to give me some feedback later about how that worked. It's a relationship business. And those are the ways that as Olkey Construction grows, you grow. And then not only does the business grow, but it's generally some really fulfilling relationships as well.
For sure. I have to say one more thing, because this is just like, I'm so grateful for this, but there's a nonprofit in Fayetteville called Startup Junkie, and it's founded by the Walton family. And I'm so jealous every time the consultant goes to marketing associations and events and stuff, because she stands up and says, "I'm here and we do free consulting for businesses. No, just free consulting." I'm like, you have the easiest sale in the world. Like, who wouldn't take you up on that? But to your point, it's like, not everybody does, And so I've had several meetings with the Startup Junkie. They offer unbelievable amount of resources, and it is free to every small business owner in Northwest Arkansas. And I'm sure that there are organizations like that elsewhere, but find out who's around you and utilize them. If nothing else, but for a personal relationship, there's going to be something gained. Yeah,
no, that sounds like an incredible resource. And from what I understand about the Walton family, they have some cash they can allocate into certain areas like that. Probably few.
I think they got a little bit of cash.
Yeah, a few pennies here and there. Well, again, you're in Vegas, you're going out for your birthday. I think this is a good place to end up, but I just we have folks from all across the country, a lot of folks in the Midwest. I want to make sure we allow people, number one, see your logo. I think your website's really well done. I think it instantly tells a story about you and kind of your passion, but where can people learn more about you and Hartley Flooring?
Yeah, our social media pages are a great place to see kind of what we're up to. And then our website, like you mentioned, www.hartleyflooring.com. Right now, we're just servicing Northwest Arkansas, but maybe someday our logo will be seen across the country.
Well, you have from way back when we first met, 2013, 2014, maybe somewhere in there, was impressed with you and thrilled to see what you're doing now. And I was excited that you made time, especially on some of your quote unquote off time there, to connect with me. So Ryan, thank you so much.
Hey, I was thankful to be a part of it. Thanks, Bradley.
All right, then. How did that go? What did you think of my conversation with Miss Ryann Hartley? I sincerely hope it was worth your time and attention. Our goal is to make this the best podcast you listen to, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas for future shows, any potential guests, and maybe any sort of issues that you are struggling with, large and small, whether it's with a builder, whether it's a subcontractor, or a boss, or I don't know, a sales rep, whatever. We want to talk about things that you care about to make your life better. You can feel free to email me directly at bradley@behindyourbacksales.com. Bradley@behindyourbacksales.com. And you can link up with me at LinkedIn and connect with me on Instagram at behindyourbackceo. And if you did indeed find this episode valuable, please share it with your network and leave a review. Those mean more to us than you could possibly know. I want to thank our sponsors once again. You can learn more about Boise Cascade's engineered wood products and their innovative SawTech technology by visiting bc.com/EWP. And our friends at Materials Exchange. What E-Trade is for the stock market, Materials Exchange is to the LBM industry. They make commodity pricing transparent, buying simple, and the fees are low. Check out Materials Exchange today. As always, thank you for listening. We're going to close out like we always do with our leadership and sales mantra. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first.